The sounds that came out of an organ were compared to the voice of God. You know, these amazing sounds that these people, they didn't hear this on a daily basis. They didn't hear cars backfiring. They didn't hear, you know, the sounds that we're assaulted with now. But for an organ to play, and especially like the bass notes, that was a rare thing, a special thing.
The chapel's such a beautiful space. You know, I think for a long time I sort of marveled when I came into the building every day, and then, you know, then you come down the stairs to where the offices are, and it's a basement, you know. So there's this level of grandeur upstairs that just blew me away when I came in every day for a long time. Sometimes it still surprises me, which is really cool.
First impressions was, I was impressed. I was already impressed coming Sunday after Sunday, hearing the choir, but then actually being down here, I know they like to call it the crypt, which to me is like, I like to call it the choir loft. So it's a little less eerie. Just seeing how the students were really dedicated to the music and to rehearsal, and that was impressive to me.
I have been a member of the choir since, I think, about 1989. Yeah, well, you know, I kind of lost track. It's a long time ago. My husband and I used to sing with the Methodist Church choir, but we became disillusioned over there. And so I came over one day to see what kind of music they were singing, and I thought I liked that music much better than what I was hearing with the Methodists. So I auditioned and got in, and my husband did as well. It was a very different choir in those days, very small, maybe 20, 23 people, and all we did was sing music of dead white men. There actually weren't that many undergraduates in the choir when I joined. It seemed to be a few grad students and a lot of community people. And I'm not sure why. You probably know the tradition of Princeton. When it was first formed, it was compulsory chapel.
You know, no longer having mandatory chapel, I think, is actually a big difference, because that opens up a level of religious and spiritual diversity and room for exploration that was not available.
So the chapel was finished in 1928. We're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the chapel, which would be in 2028. And when it was built, the organ was actually not in this position. It was in a slightly different position, turned, that actually probably made it more challenging for there to be one person in charge.
Here, the chapel kind of walks this line between being academic and being kind of being something for the whole community.
The other Ivy Leagues don't seem to have such a prominent chapel. That, you know, the chapel at Yale is not like this. The chapel at Harvard is not like this.
I would also say that we have an amazing platform here in the chapel. We are in a situation here that's very different from churches where I've worked, in that, you know, we do have so much financial support from generous donors and students and, you know, alumni from the past, that we're able to do many things here that we can't do elsewhere. We can do, for example, this Mozart Requiem this weekend. We're hiring wonderful players. They play on Broadway. They play in some really wonderful chamber orchestras up there. They are just outstanding players. And that requires some resources, and we have them here. It's really remarkable. Part of what I try to do as, you know, a steward of those resources is to think about how I use them. You know, what are the voices that I'm amplifying? What are the things that I'm saying? What are the things that on a Sunday morning when the chapel choir sings, what are we offering to our community that might speak to them and help them enter into a sense of the spiritual, whatever that means for them, which is a really interesting and it's a position of responsibility that I take very seriously. I think what I would do with that thought is compare it with churches that I've worked at as sort of my part-time job outside of the university. In those settings, there is some diversity of of religious belief, but it's all Christian and it's all, say, Lutheran or United Methodist or one of those denominations. And here we are non-denominational to start with, just it's an ecumenical worship service, so many different Christian ideas are represented in the worship service and in the community that worships together. And then the choir itself is a little bit of everything. We've got, we have people who practice Hinduism, Judaism. We have Christians. We have spiritual but not religious. We have I don't know what I believe, but I love this music, And for me, seeing the chapel choir photos over the years begin to introduce people of color and women and non-binary people, just amazing to me to see those changes. I think the chapel choir shows a better representation of our community than it ever has, which is thrilling.
The students, how they relate to the music, how they relate to the lyrics, how they relate to each other, and then how they embrace us as community members is something special, something quite special.
There's a movie with a soundtrack, so we projected the movie and we sang the soundtrack for our April concert. That was a real hoot. And one time we did the Benjamin Britten St. Nicholas, which is a musical drama. And, we had costumes and all of the bit, and, we did the whole bit, the boys in the barrel and all of that. It was fun. And we sang at Carnegie Hall one time. And Ann Penna was the one who started the choir going on tours. I think it was 2009, the first time the choir went on tour. So that's been a tradition ever since.
We're in Spain, and this was just this past January, and this was gonna be our first concert. And prior to the concert, the monastery, they weren't ready to receive us just yet. So we stayed outside the monastery and we practiced in the alleyway, and just the echoes of our voices, it just was phenomenal as we were practicing, and people were passing by, then they stopped and they watched us sing and they applauded after, and that was epic, absolutely epic.